Down in Duval County, we roll, we rise. People all around me, eyes on the prize. Podcasts and stories, talking about the grind. Every win and glory, Jaguars on my mind. Duval, let's hear it loud. Jaguars make us proud. Game day, feel the crowd. Duval, sing it loud. News and rumors flying, games that steal the show. On this team we're riding, in the sun they glow. Through the ups and the downs, together we stand tall. In our hearts and our towns, Jaguars, we hear the call. Duval, let's hear it loud. Jaguars make us proud. Game day, feel the crowd. Duval, sing it loud. Duval, sing it loud.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Jaguars Fan Battle. My name is Ammo, and I got my good buddy Josh over here.
Hey.
It's been a while.
Yeah, good to be back on the show, right? Like, been a busy season of life for me, but I'm always glad to be back, talk about the Jaguars, and hopefully somehow figure out a way to make fun of the Titans while we're on.
That's always the objective, right? So we had a preseason game this week. We went up against the reigning champion Kansas City Chiefs in our first episode, or our first game of the year. And we started out with a win. But
yeah, it was nice. It was, it was way too hot. I didn't go. I'll just tell you, like the heat, the feels like temperature was like 107 at kickoff, and I saw that, and I was like, I'm gonna skip this one. I'll watch it on TV. Yeah. I'm good.
That stadium is brutal when it's those hot games, man. There's nowhere that you're escaping that heat.
Yeah, I love the Jaguars, but the worst experience I've ever had outside in Florida weather was at that stadium 2 years ago when the Texans were in town, and someone had spilled ketchup all over the row of seats in front of me, and it was just baking in the sun. Oh. It was just that nasty, like, warm ketchup smell. And of course, the Jags lose that game. So you sit there and smell that nasty ketchup smell the whole time, and then take the L. Take it home. But there's also been many great moments. I was watching that intro video there. Rayshawn Jenkins fumble at the end of the Titans game a couple years ago. So lots of happy memories there too. But I much prefer it in the winter and not in August and September.
Those August and September games are brutal, and that always ends up being the time that I go to Jaguars games. So, Smart planning on my part. Anyway, preseason game, a lot that you can look into, but then again, you don't have a lot of starters playing, so how much you really looking to take from it. We talked about it briefly before we got on here. What I really look for is I want to see our depth players look good against other depth of other teams, because that has been a pretty big issue for us in years past. Like, we've been able to do well in certain areas, but one little injury here and it's just everything shuts down. The lack of depth has been a problem. So looking for the way that our depth plays against other teams is something that's important to me, and I thought that they did a pretty decent job of that. Starters look good too. First thing that I wrote.
I will. So if you'll permit me a moment, absolutely. I will say the starters looked good with the exception of, and it's Patrick Mahomes and arguably the best offense in the league. The defensive line struggled a little bit at the beginning on that first drive, and they got lucky. It's a preseason game, so ultimately the wins, loss don't really matter, but they do kind of matter. They got lucky on that first drive, a couple drop passes, and then the Jaguars also got lucky again. They had the so far longest kick return with this new weird kickoff rules. We can talk about that in a minute. Yeah, I thought I was going to hate these new kickoff rules, but I think if they work the way that the league wants them to work, we might see a lot more of those big kick returns, which might make it a little bit more exciting. But anyway, so they got lucky. The Jags go down. Trevor Lawrence, throws a couple darts, but they couldn't run the ball at all. The
That
starters
is
did not do a good job. Travis Etienne, is doing everything he can, but that O line, especially the interior, they just
if you can't move the interior of the front, you're not gonna be able to run the ball.
yeah,
And
you
that's
got to be
going
able to
to
run through some of those gaps up in the front, and they just can't. They can't move those guys off the ball. They're getting blown into the backfield. But they didn't look terrible, but the problems that they had last year, a little bit of suspect play on both lines, reared its head. You got to take it with a grain of salt. It's the first preseason game. Nobody's game planning. You're not really strategizing that much. You haven't figured out matchups. I will say, Walker had a big whiff on a potential sack at one point. But
Yep.
he was in the backfield wreaking some havoc. So you're
Mhm.
seeing the little messy things that come at the beginning of training camp and preseason, right? There's a lot of basic stuff that they're still hashing out. But overall, like it was actually, dare I say, a fun preseason game to watch.
Yep.
Some of these preseason games are just a slog. Like they're just not good. Like the Hall of Fame game is always exciting for about 5 minutes, and then you realize like it is just a sloppy mess of a game because
6 months for a football game, and then it's here, and you're like, "This is great," and then you're like, "This product sucks. I need football to be back." And this
yeah,
is
and it's not really anybody's fault. It's just so early in the training camp process that
Mhm.
nobody they can't really
People
put
are
a
still very vanilla in what they're
yeah.
doing.
Yeah, but overall it was good. It was entertaining. I actually watched the entire thing, which I don't normally do in the preseason. I'll record it and then skim through it later for all the interesting bits. But Mac Jones looked pretty good. Beathard looked decent. Tank Bigsby is finally running like his nickname. He was plowing through people. So overall, like no injuries, got a win. The backups look solid against the backups of one of the best teams in the league. There's really no. Obviously, there's things to clean up here and there always with the preseason game, but overall, not a bad way to kick things off.
Not a bad way to kick things off. To talk about what you brought up, the offensive line definitely is a problem. Like in a vacuum, when we look at it, I'm not that worried. Preseason week 1, things are going to happen. But when you look at 2023 and what the biggest problem we had was that the interior offensive line had no push, and because of the center, it was making the right guard and the left guard pick up more slack. Whether it was actually them not doing their part or they had to pick up more slack, the interior as a whole needed
Yeah.
work. And to see that start already when we thought that the center was the problem, and we went out and replaced him with a veteran guy who's played on playoff teams for years. And I'm not saying it's him, but to see those issues show up in the first preseason game is concerning to me when it's been a problem for a long time. If it's just in a vacuum, I'm really not that worried. But because it's been a problem for a while, I'm a little more worried than maybe the next person.
Yeah, and they gave up. I think they gave up one sack on Trevor, like on a fourth down play or something.
And that was probably on Trevor more than it was the
Yeah,
offensive
he held
line.
the ball a
I
little bit.
think because I pulled up the all 22 to kind of see, because it looked like he was looking deep, and I think he was trying to get to Brian Thomas because he wanted to get him a catch. It looked like he was really looking for that, and he missed what was underneath. And
Yeah.
he's been guilty of that in the past, of looking for the big play and missing the nice little easy check down in front of him. So not worried about it. Preseason, I'd rather you try that kind of stuff now and go for the hero play there than do it when it really matters. But that's really a lot of the negative that I wanted to talk about. Was the interior offensive line is concerning. I know you said the defensive line was a little bit of an issue in the beginning. We did just activate Armstead off the PUP list, so that should definitely help get the defensive line back up playing at a better level. We had a lot of exciting plays happen. That one throw by Beathard down the sideline to BTJ, that was a
Yeah, that's
beautiful,
good.
beautiful catch. The way that he was able to adjust and make that happen, really, really nice to see. That Parker Washington kickoff return you were talking
Mhm.
about, the way that he was able to just cut on a dime, cut back with a sea of red around him pretty much through the whole middle of that, and just find a way to get down to just past the 20 was really exciting to see. And you can really tell that the Jaguars took their time with the new rules, seeing ways that they can set this up, and they've been trying this, and they went out and they signed Duvernay. They got people like Washington. Even Tank Bigsby can return kicks. They got a lot of guys that have the potential to break big plays there. So I'm excited to see. You said that you were a little skeptical about it. I was skeptical about it because I'm like, some things we just need to leave the way they are. It's been a tradition in the game. But I had seen these in the other league. Was it the UFL that they took it from?
Mm-hmm.
Or that?
Yep.
Yeah.
One of the other, yeah.
One of those offshoot leagues. I was watching it when I was at work, and I was like looking at it. I'm like, that's so weird, but that's like, I can see why there's not injuries happening here. You don't have the 20-yard sprint head first into somebody, and it's still kind of set up similar to a kickoff, but it's giving us more opportunities to see those highlight plays where they can make that run and try to get those kickoffs, because we've been losing it. The Devin Hesters don't matter anymore. They don't exist anymore. Jamal Agnew got one kickoff return, and we thought he was the greatest kick returner in, history. And it just doesn't happen anymore.
he also had the field goal kick return too. So,
Yes.
but it's been a long time since a team really had to worry about a kick returner, right? Like Devin, like you said, the Devin Hesters of the world. Like, people forget just how, like, anytime your team played Devin Hester and he was getting the ball, like, people were like legit, like, oh Lord, every time they touched it, it could have been a touchdown. Yeah, I mean, it seems like the idea is working. We'll see. The season will tell the tale once there's a season worth of stats and data to compare to previous years to see how it stacks up. But but yeah, I was with you. It's one of those things where it's like, why are we messing with it? Like, why are we why are we tweaking it? But speaking of kicking, Cam Little,
Yes.
I think we have a kicker. Like,
he's got a little swag to him too.
Yeah, he does. I like it. He a little reminiscent of sort of Josh Scobie, like in your face. Like, but even that, like, 63-yarder or whatever, if he hadn't hooked it, like, that thing was good from like 70. And
I keep seeing the tweets like every day from training camp. He hit from 64, but probably good from 68. Yeah. Probably good from 70. So I know it's training camp and it's not the same as a game, but just being able to have a leg with that ability is something we haven't had.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, obviously he's a kicker in college, so it's not like he's never faced pressure packed situations. Obviously, the NFL, bigger stage, more pressure, whatever. But it's not like, he just came in off the street and started kicking too. But it will be interesting to see, the first sort of game winning on the line, high pressure situation. How does he do? But he kicked, I think, 2 or 3 other field goals, and they were just straight down the middle.
Yeah, I think it was 3 out of 4 and 1 out of 1 on extra points. So, pretty good day at the office.
Yeah, not too bad.
What else did we have? That was pretty. Tank Bigsby had a nice little.
He did.
Through. So, they were trying to make things happen with these new rules. As long as Tank's not involved in the passing game, Tank's been looking like a guy. He did this last year. He had some highlight plays in the run game. And I think as long as we don't involve him in the passing game whatsoever, at least right now, we'll be all right. Because I
don't care about throwing him the ball. I mean, it'd be nice if he could catch a few here and there just to keep defenses guessing. But his big thing also was, like, if you put him in and you end up calling an audible to a pass play, he struggled, in pass protection when the few times he was called on to do it. But I will say, him and both he and the offensive line, when the backups, came in, the backup offensive line versus the Chiefs backup defensive line was actually able to get some traction in the run game. So that was nice to see, nice to see that happening. And just overall, they didn't look outmatched, because you and I both know there's been seasons where, like, the starters were decent and then the backups would come in and they would just get blown off the ball.
Mhm.
You know, and I don't know, it's just nice to see that didn't happen. So
Yeah. Yeah. The depth thing is definitely really important because no team can stay 100% healthy. You're not gonna have your
yep,
starting 22 players, in week
yep.
18 right before the playoffs. It's just not gonna happen. So, depth is really important, which I'm actually gonna kinda use that to segue into this, here. Trent Baalke. He has been a hot topic down in Jacksonville. He's had his moments where everybody's like talking about him like he's the best thing, and then he's had his moments where he's just the worst. I've definitely been one that's been super critical of him. I'm not his biggest fan this off season. He did do a lot of things that I felt kept his job for the time being. I'm not ready to crown him king for anything yet, but definitely enough to keep his job. But I know you have some words, and I'd really like to hear them.
Yeah, I mean, Trent Baalke is fine, and that's the problem, right? Like we've had fine for a long time. You know, he brought in Gabe Davis, all the offseason moves that they did. I still say they bungled the way they handled the Josh Allen, Calvin Ridley situation, right? Like, they should have reversed that. They should have had that Josh Allen deal done before the franchise tag needed to be applied, and they should have franchise tag Ridley. I mean, I like you know the wide receiver, they brought in. I think that's a good move. Like all those things are good. Like, I just don't know how people say that Balky is doing a great job when he didn't address the offensive line enough to fix the problem.
Yeah.
If you look at um, the game and then the joint practices that happened today, which I know we haven't gotten into yet, the offensive line continues to struggle in run blocking and pass protection, which is going to be a if that continues. And we're still early in the preseason, who knows? But the front end of the schedule is just this gauntlet of doom. Then the Jags are playing. It's the
Mhm.
Dolphins, the Browns, the Bills, and then I think the Texans. Like the first
Yep.
four games, just like oh
All
my god.
playoff teams from last year.
So and listen, that's the NFL. That's how it goes. That that's the schedule you play is the one you're given is the one you got to play. But I just think that Trent Baalke's lack of addressing the offensive line is going to come back to haunt the Jags. I hate to say that. I hate to be the guy that's being a naysayer, but that's the one thing with Baalke. Baalke makes a lot of moves that are good moves. He is not a terrible GM, but he also perplexingly just ignores issues that are glaring sometimes. Like, and maybe they tried to do things and it just didn't work out. They couldn't pull all the triggers or pull all the levers that they wanted to pull to make offensive line changes. I don't know. It's always easy for me to sit here in my chair not knowing all the details and not being the one that
Mhm.
has to actually do the job to sort of critique it. I'm not sold on Balky. Still, I still have my reservations. I will apologize to him in person and buy him some sort of a gift if he proves me wrong and the Jaguars win the Super Bowl. Like I will eat my words and never say another bad word about the man. But right now, I just worry that his lack of attention to the offensive line is going to come back to haunt us. So I don't know.
Yeah, so it's kind of like what I said. He did enough for keeping his job right now. I think we got to pump the brakes on saying he's 100% this great GM because when you look at it in a vacuum, signing Trevor Lawrence is great, signing Josh Allen is great, signing Tyson Campbell is great, doing all these things are great. But when you look at it, he could have re-signed Josh Allen last year for less money, but
Mhm.
he also has a thing where he's like, I don't negotiate during the season, which you have your thing, but you have somebody who's playing one of the most premier positions in the league who's shown that he's good. He, still had questions. The 17 and a half sack season put that question to bed, but you could have had him cheaper and you could have been able to tag Ridley. I do think Gabe Davis probably fits the offense a little better with what we're trying to do. Um, with the way the room has shaked out. Because if we kept Calvin Ridley and we went a different way, I don't think that Brian Thomas Jr. is in here, and the room probably looks different. So I think it's probably a better setup for what we're trying to do. But Calvin Ridley versus Gabe Davis, Calvin Ridley is the guy who's going to beat more guys one-on-one.
Yeah, Gabe Davis is like the refined version of Zay Jones, right? Like a guy, Zay Jones had these flashes of production across a couple seasons, but he wasn't consistent. He was injured at certain points. Like, he wasn't a consistent. And Gabe Jones has sort of been at that same, or Gabe Davis has been the same level at Zay Jones, but a little bit better even consistently across his career.
Yeah, he's kind of just like consistently just high end 3, lower 2, like just the 2 guy. Like he's not pushing to be a starter anywhere. He's going to get you 700, maybe 800 yards and 7 or 8 touchdowns. That's just where he's going to float. So if people are thinking Gabe Davis is going to come here and all of a sudden be like an 1,100 yard receiver and just all of a sudden be something different, no, like we still have Christian Kirk, we have Evan Ingram. Those are going to be number 1 and number 2.
Yep.
How much Brian Thomas Jr. comes along will determine where Gabe Davis stacks up with targets. It's not going
to. And Brian Thomas Jr. is the eventual replacement for Kirk, right? Like,
exactly.
And not that I want Christian Kirk to leave. I think Christian Kirk has been worth every penny, even though we technically overpaid. But Gabe Davis is a guy that is dangerous enough that when teams start to double team and account for Ingram and Kirk, now Gabe Davis is open, consistently catching the ball. His hands are solid. He's not a guy that drops a lot of passes, which was, Calvin Ridley's big problem last year. Dude just couldn't hold on to the ball. Don't even get me started. The one, I forget which game it was where Trevor hit him in the hands. Just right in the hands.
There was a couple. The Texans, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then he just, but it is what it is, right? The ship has sailed. Balky, Balky has found a way to make enough moves, like you said, to be secure. I don't think he should be fired. I don't think he's a terrible GM. I just wonder, is what he's doing enough, to get the Jags to where they can consistently be playoff competitive, right? Like, dude, if we had a run where like the next 7 out of 8 years, the Jaguars are making deep runs into the playoffs, maybe winning a Super Bowl, maybe not. Like, I'd be over the moon. Like, so, and like I said, if I'm wrong about Balky, I'll be the first to shout it from the rooftops. And
I'll be the first to say it. I got no problem being wrong if I say something, but I'm not gonna shade away from saying what I think something is. And talking about the offensive line issues with Balky, he went out and he got Mitch Morse, which I thought was a great move because Luke Fortner was definitely the weakest point of the offensive line last year. Yep. And he definitely made others have to work in different ways to compensate for his lack of strength up front, which is affecting the run game, which if you can't block the middle of the offensive line and you let pressure go through the middle, that is the quickest way to take a sack for a quarterback. And that's the quickest way to get a quarterback off his spot and mess up the flow and rhythm of an offense. So if you can't protect up front and right in the middle, it's going to affect your offense in bad ways. So I thought the Mitch Morse signing was great, but you go back to last year's draft, he drafts a tight end who's, a second string guy, maybe even third string, and he's not really a valuable part of the offense. He's not really a valuable part of run blocking at the moment when you could have used that second round pick on an offensive lineman. You took a third round pick on a running back who he had a really, really rough rookie year. Like, he's looking really good so far with Tank, but these are premium draft spots where you could get a guy like Tank later on, and you could have got something like offensive line early on, and maybe things just didn't work out. I'm not in the room. I wasn't there. I don't know what everybody was looking at, but there were opportunities where the offensive line could have been addressed in different ways and with more urgency. So yes, the Mitch Morse signing is good, but let's look at the rest of it. Balky missed on this. He missed on this. He missed on this. And the Josh Allen situation, we talked about that, could have paid him earlier, missed on that, forced the Calvin Ridley situation to come down to a bidding war where it now looks like we lost him out to the Titans, which also is just bad optics. So it all could have played out in a very different way, but because of the way he likes to operate his style of business, it caused some issues there. But he was able to get a quarterback signed long term, and I will say that Trevor Lawrence deal, I've said it 100 times, is a great deal. The fact that it doesn't start for 2 years is great. It keeps everything existing the same, and by the time he starts, he's gonna be like the 8th highest paid quarterback before that contract even starts. So
Yeah.
that's great.
Listen, you have to you have to pay your quarterback. You have to. You can't. There's no scenario where the Jaguars have a successful future where the quarterback you have in the roster that is a good quarterback. I don't care what anybody says. He's a good quarterback. Um, doesn't get paid, right? And the
Is he worth
market.
275 at this exact moment? Has he proven that? Probably not. But would I pay him 275 over 5? Absolutely, without a doubt. He is good enough for that, and we'll see it. He's
Would
gonna sh
would and here's the thing. Like I've said to a couple people who have complained about the Trevor Lawrence deal. Would you have let him go to free agency? Do you think he would not have been paid that by some other team?
he would have
He
gotten the
absolutely would
exact
have.
same deal
He
from
would
somebody
have
else.
absolutely because the market, it's a fixed, very small
They
market
they
for
do know
quarterbacks.
that the Giants exist, right?
Yeah, like like somebody would have taken a flyer. There's so many teams that would have, he could have ended up with the Viking. Like who knows where he would have ended up, but somebody would have paid him that money. And yes, Trevor needs to be more consistent. He needs to do
Yes.
some things better. But I was in the stadium for that playoff game against the Chargers, and I've never seen a human being come back from the sort of morally crushing, performance he had with 5
There's
interceptions in the first half,
Yeah,
and
there's not a lot
just
of quarterbacks that can throw 4 interceptions and keep their mental composure, especially at that young age,
yeah,
to not completely check out of that game and be like, "I really screwed this away, like, I gotta think about next year, I'm gonna work." Like, kids are on the sideline already thinking that type of stuff, but he was able to keep his composure and say, "Nah, let's get 1 touchdown before half, let's reset, and if we do that, then we c" like, he just kept his composure, and that's really nice to see in such a young kid. He's going into his 4th year, and he's 24 years old. He's not even the oldest QB in the division, and you know what? I couldn't be happier with that deal. I don't care
yeah,
what
I agree.
any hater says.
And even the Josh Allen deal, you can argue that they overpaid
I
when
don't care.
I don't
I don't
care. You
care.
have That's another position, these monster defensive ends, you have to pay them. Like
Mhm.
again, if you would let him go to free agency, do you think he would not have gotten that money somewhere else? He absolutely would have. 17 and a half sacks or whatever it was, the final number. Like there's no scenario where he's not getting paid. So we might as well pay him. We'd pay some other bum,
Yep.
that I mean, why? I just, so I'm glad that Balky did those things. I'm glad that,
Mhm.
some of the things are working out the way they were. But going back to what you said about offensive linemen, all the Tank Bigsby's in the world aren't worth anything if you don't have an O line that can run block. If they can't run block. You could put Fred Taylor
Thanks,
back
big
there in his
yeah,
prime, and it wouldn't matter a lick because
exactly.
there's not a hole that's open. He's going to get creamed every time. Like so, I would have preferred a lineman instead of Brenton Strange, whatever way his name's pronounced. Um, but we are where we are, right? Like you gotta win the game with the players that you have. In the roster, there'll be some cuts, some guys will go, but like, as far as the starting offensive line, it's pretty much set. And we'll see how they do in this gauntlet. I don't know. I hate to be the pessimist, but I think after the first 5 games of the year, we'll know whether or not the Jaguars are any good, right? Um, whether
And
they're
it'll
good
be
enough
tough
to compete.
because it's gonna come down to what they put on film because the record might not reflect a good or bad team because it is a rough 4-game stretch. Like, you could be 2-2 or 1-3 and not be a bad football team. You could just have some things go the wrong way. So see what happens on film. But that first month is really gonna tell us because we're going against 4 teams that played in the playoffs last year, and if we can't hang, then the season's
Yeah, the 2 games that worry me are Miami and Houston, right?
Houston's
Uh,
always a problem for us.
yeah, and
Always
let's
a
just,
problem for us.
I mean, Stroud is a good quarterback. Like there's no way around it. Like you don't have the season that he had. He's not in the Hall of Fame like Texans fans want to put him
Oh,
in already, but he's a good quarterback, right? He's good
he is a
enough,
good quarterback, 100%.
to win games. I do think I'll just say it. I think the Browns and the Bills are a little bit overrated. I think those are the two winnable games. For me, the Dolphins were sort of up and down, hit or miss. I think that's a winnable game too. But like the Dolphins' offense is hard to stop. They put
Yeah.
77 points on the team last year. I forget who they were playing. They beat the brakes off them.
Broncos.
Yeah, that's right. It was the Broncos. So we'll see. But I think what gives me hope is that our new defensive coordinator seems like he knows what he's doing, and the defense
Defensive line
seems
guru, baby.
the defense seems juiced up, right? Like they
Mhm.
seem like they're coming. They seem I've listened to some of the interviews as the players come off the field, and the defensive players seem to be really hyped up and buying into to his strategy. So obviously the proof's in the pudding. We'll see what the results are, but it seems to be the way they're talking and the way that they're playing and the way that they're bought into the strategy, it feels like that playoff run when Jalen Ramsey was here.
They
It
had
just
that
seems like
attitude.
yeah, they have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder and an attitude, and all great defenses have that.
I was gonna say,
Uh,
you can't have a great defense without having a bad attitude.
yeah, so we'll see. I'm hopeful there. I think hopefully if the defense is good, that will keep us in some of those games, and it's really on Trevor and the offense to deliver
Not
some
screwed
points,
up.
right? So,
Yeah.
and that's what I want most from Trevor this year, like the just head scratching, mind boggling mistakes that he made, like in that Baltimore game where he's just running down the field with the ball and dude just drops the ball, he just slips out of his hands, like
Yeah, the
uh
fumbling is my biggest thing with Trevor. If he can really limit that, that's
yeah,
going to change a lot for the offense. But that kinda comes down to the interior offensive line. Fumbling is because he's getting the pocket push from the middle,
yeah,
and he's got a big dude pushed on his lap, and not much you can really do there. But if he can really focus on the fumbling and not playing so much hero ball and taking the smart chuck down, or sometimes just taking the sack, just take an
yep,
easy sack, take an easy throw out. Sometimes just taking the dumb, easy play is what you got to do. And if I could see a little bit more of that, I don't want to see a lot of that. Like, I'm not trying to take away from he's got some gunslinger to him. I don't want to take away from that. But in some moments, don't be Carson Wentz, bro. Just relax.
yeah. Yeah. Um, you know, yeah, exactly. I make smarter choices sometimes, Um, but there were games where they were playing well. Now the defense was getting the break speed off them when the Browns came to Jacksonville last year. But the Jags were in that game. Like they were
Mhm.
in, they were the offense was blow for, toe to toe, blow for blow with the Browns offense last year when they were here. And then Trevor gets hurt. We got the famous, that he refused a cart, and everyone was like, "Oh, the Jaguars are such a poor franchise. They don't have a medical cart." Like, all that nonsense that happened.
Yeah.
That's the sort of stuff that gives me hope. Like I have seen a lot of Jaguars quarterbacks play in person, and a lot of them were very bad. And some of them were okay, like Blake Bortles, an okay quarterback. Like he had a couple moments where it's like, oh, okay, he's actually good, but Blake Bortles never had the sort of throws, never made the sort of throws that I've seen Trevor Lawrence make. Like,
I
um,
love Blake, but no. He's not
yeah,
half the quarterback that Trevor is.
no, there's never a scenario where Blake Bortles throws 5 interceptions in the first half of a playoff game and then comes back to win that game. It just doesn't happen.
Probably throws 3 more.
Yeah, three and two of them pick sixes, right? Because that was his. That was the bane of
The
Blake
pick
Bortles'
6,
existence.
man.
Yeah, oh, the
I
brutal.
remember I drove from, because I was living in North Carolina at the time in 2015. The Panthers played the Jaguars in Jacksonville week 1, and Josh Norman picked off Blake Bortles and waved at him to start,
Yeah, I
and
was
that
at
was
that.
actually
Yep.
that was their Super Bowl run. I just remember that play. It's etched in my brain, just Josh Norman waving by. I was like,
Yep.
that's Blake Bortles' experience right there.
Yeah, I still love Blake though. He's the most
Mhm.
most Bortles. He's the most Bortles of all time. But all that is to say, people say that Trevor Lawrence is not good or doesn't have the potential to be great. or elite even, you're telling on yourself that you don't understand football or you're just biased, right? You just hate the
And they
Jags,
don't
which I
watch
can
film.
respect that. Yeah, like, and I'm no expert. Like, I've never played. I didn't play in the NFL. I didn't play in college. I didn't do any of that stuff. But like, you watch enough football and you listen to people who are smart talk about what's good and what's not good. You start to pick up a little bit of some of this stuff and just, Trevor Lawrence has the ability to be an elite quarterback. Can he do it
100%.
consistently? And can he get support from the offensive line to give him time to make
We'll find
throws?
out.
And the proof of this, and it's a very small sample size, and take it with a grain of salt, is the joint practice that the Jags had today against the Bucks. They had a 7-on-7 drill where the Bucks were not able to get any pressure on Trevor, and Trevor was carving them up. Like the beat reporters and all the bloggers and podcasters for the Buccaneers were going nuts on Twitter, complaining
Mhm.
about how bad Trevor Lawrence was just carving the
Yep.
Buccaneers up. But then we get to the 11-11, 11-on-11, and the starting offensive line is in there, and Trevor, is getting sacked left and right. And they're not real sacks. They're not taking anybody to the ground, but like, some of these
Yeah.
plays, they look at them and they say,
Somebody
"Oh,
said that he got sacked like 6 times or something like that.
yeah,
That's not
yeah,
good, man.
it's not good."
That's
Now, I think too, part of it is they're probably not playing with full intensity. It's a practice. I think they were in pads, and I don't know if they were in full pads or partial pads. They're not actually doing full contact. Nobody's tackling anybody. So you got to think that it's not the same level of effort and intensity, but still, you would like to see your offensive line not give up that many. The reverse side of that is that the Jaguars defense played pretty well. They gave up a couple of big plays here and there, but they put a lot of pressure, broke up a lot of passes. Mike Evans had one big, he just burned some third string cornerback or somebody and just torched them. But Mike Evans is an elite wide receiver in the league, right?
Hall
Like,
of
he's going to
Famer.
have those moments. But again, give Blake Bortles time, and I believe he's an elite quarterback. But that's true of any quarterback. Any quarterback that has time, hopefully, is going to play better. Um, I think the better the offensive line plays, and the less he gets into those pressure pack situations, the better he's going to do in them, right? But time will tell. The season will tell the tale, and unfortunately, our division, everybody's chasing Houston. So we'll see. The goal, I think the measure of success this year is the same as last year: win the division or make the playoffs. If you don't do that, it is a failure. Last year was a failure. They didn't win the division. They didn't make the playoffs.
all you
Same
had to
for
do
this
is win one more of the last 6 games,
year.
and you were
Yeah,
fine.
and the last game against an anemic Titans team that was clearly
You should
flying
not
the
have
white flag.
you should have
They beat the
sat
brakes
Trevor.
off.
His shoulder was not right. You
Yeah,
could see his shoulder wasn't right. You sit him for 1 week, maybe he's good for the playoffs, but you just need somebody who can make the layup throws, and you could see Trevor couldn't do it. And
couldn't do it.
I can't fault Trevor because, like, dude, I'm an athlete. Like, I'm gonna play until my freaking leg falls off. Like, I don't care. Like, you're not gonna tell me I'm not playing. So I get that, but with an AC joint sprain, man, you're a quarterback. That's quite literally the one thing you don't want to have.
Yeah, and at that point, if Balky has not um, built a good enough roster to beat the Titans in that scenario with a backup QB, then that's an indictment on the way he's built that roster at that point, right?
And if
Because
you
there's
don't trust
no
your
reason to
and
not
if
have.
you don't trust your backup quarterback enough to give him a game to start through 4 different injuries,
Yeah,
you got 1 game against the worst team in the league. They let him play. Outside of that, they didn't put him in at any time. They made Trevor or like they were okay with him going through playing injured with a knee, with an ankle, with a shoulder, with a concussion. They're like, yeah, that's better than CJ Beathard.
yeah, I think maybe that's why they brought in Mac Jones, right? Like, I don't know for sure.
That's
I'm not.
when all these trolls want to say, oh, they brought in Mac Jones QB1. No, it's literally because they couldn't trust CJ Beathard enough to start him at any point during one of those 4 injuries, except for the Carolina Panthers game. And that's why they go out and get somebody like Mac Jones.
Yeah, and Mac Jones is sort of a feel good story if you're from Jacksonville,
he's
right?
from
Like, he's a local
Jacksonville.
kid, played at bowls, played at a high level, had some success in college. was a fan of the team as a kid growing up, right? Like, so that's one of those cool moments. It doesn't amount to a hill of
Mhm.
beans as far as success on the field. Who knows what's going to happen? But it is pretty nice that somebody who grew up here, was a fan of the team, has gotten a chance, to play here. So I always like those stories, whether Mac Jones is a good QB or not. I don't care. I
Well,
mean,
if
I
all
do
goes
care, but
right,
like,
he should never see the field, so
correct. If the season is a overwhelming success, then Mac Jones will never play a snap, and I think Mac Jones would be okay with not playing a snap and maybe winning a Super Bowl, right? Like,
I'd say so.
best job in the league is backup QB, right?
Mhm.
So
All right, well, do you have any, final talking points about the game? I think we covered pretty much most
yeah, I
important
think
stuff for this one.
I think we covered it all, really. So
And you touched on the joint practices. I only really got to see some tweets. I saw Tyson Campbell had a breakup, but I think Mike Evans just dropped it when I watched the video. But outside of that, I did see some of the, because I live in Tampa, some of the Tampa reporters talking about how they were getting torched in the 7-on-7. So I definitely saw that too. So
yeah,
that's
it's pretty
that's
funny.
always
And
nice
some
to
of
see.
the Jaguars reporters retweeting their tweets where the Bucks reporters were complaining was pretty low key pettiness, but I'm here for it.
For it
That's
too.
one of the cool things about football is you can be petty and you're not really hurting anyone's feelings, right? It's just a dumb game that we all love. So.
And if you're here, your feelings are hurt, then you should probably look at yourself more than anyone else.
Yeah, if you get your feelings hurt over a football game, you should turn the TV off, go take a walk, have a snack, maybe take a nap,
Mm-hmm.
and
Eat a
then come
Snicker.
back and watch some more football. Oh.
All right. Well, everybody, it's been a great episode of the Jaguars Fan Battle. You got me, Ammo. You can see me on Twitter at AmmoJags, and I'll be doing the Jaguars Fan Battle episodes. And I've got my boy Josh over here, so he can tell you where he's at.
Yeah. On Twitter, my handle's Josh Gives Up. I forgot to put it on my stupid little name here. But yeah, I'm on Twitter. Hit me up. Give me your snide remarks, your stupid comments, and I'll make fun of your team in return. So yeah, it's fun. Always good being on the show. Glad I could come on and talk some ball.
All right, everybody. We'll catch you next week.